Good evening and welcome.
Yep.
Today is June 24th. It is 7 o'clock. We're in the Cardinal Room. This is the legislative meeting for the Upper Dublin School District. I'd like to call the meeting to order. In a minute, I'm going to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. After the pledge, please remain standing for a moment of silence in memory of our Maple Glen student Esther Park, who passed on June 20th from a tragic accident. So please remain standing after the pledge. Everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I've asked Robert Kim to say a few words at this time. Dr. Kim?
Thank you, Dr. Open. Typically in our meetings, we rejoice with students as they are rejoicing today. We mourn with those who are mourning. Dr. Yanni ends his Monday morning meetings with a statement where he says, "Your kids are our kids." We really appreciate that sentiment, and today again we regret to have the loss of one of our students that weighs heavy upon all of our hearts. I got to be able to share a meal with Mr. Park and Esther once at Corner Bakery, and I can testify that her love and joy were evident and how much her parents loved Esther. No amount of words can express the pain the passing of Esther Park at such a young age is, and particularly difficult for anyone, especially the Park family. The board and the school district of Upper Dublin extend our deepest sympathies to the Park family and all who are mourning at this time. We are sending you love and prayers and hope during this difficult time. I'd like to just end with a simple quote. "Death leaves a heartache that no one can heal. Love leaves a memory no one can steal." Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. This time we'll have a call to order. Yeah, and I'll roll call. Yes.
Sorry, I left it off.
Lift it off.
Mrs. Franczyk.
Here.
Mrs. Good.
Here.
Dr. Kim.
Here.
Dr. Ludwig.
Here.
Mr. Ropsky.
Here.
Mrs. Rothman.
Here.
She is here telephonically. Mrs. Sherbier.
Here.
Mr. Sirota. Dr. Lubinowitz.
Here.
All present.
Okay, thank you. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone. A couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago on Monday, we had some downpours, and fortunately, we moved the graduation to Tuesday. And I'd like to say it was indeed a beautiful night in many respects. The weather was gorgeous, and I think the ceremony was excellent. So we will be looking at those names tonight and confirming that those are our list of graduates. Another announcement I'd like to make is Tom Sigafus and Brendan Bray. They're very, very sad tonight because this will be their last meeting, in over 10 years. So I think I've worked with them in Upper Dublin for all that time. I'd like to wish the two of you the very, very best and long and healthy retirement. And thank you for your years of service in Upper Dublin and elsewhere. Thank you. Dr. Ludwig would also like to acknowledge the meaning of the white attire that some of us are wearing today.
So we're wearing white because 100 years ago today, Pennsylvania ratified the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote.
Thank you, Dr. Ludwig. Just one other quick announcement. At the end of the meeting tonight, I'm going to be talking a little bit about one of our neighboring districts has implemented a tax rebate program, which piggybacks off the state's rebate program. When we get to other business, I'm going to talk about that just a little bit more about how that program operates. So if you can stick around to the end, I think it's some worthwhile information that we're researching right now for possible consideration in another year or two. So also, just a quick reminder that just almost, I think, every item, Dr. Yanni, we've covered in committees. So we should be able to get through most of these items tonight with little discussion. It's all passed by committees. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Yanni for his superintendent report.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. I would, in addition to the words that Dr. Kim shared about Esther Park, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to Michelle Clegg, our school psychologists and counselors, in addition to the Therapy Dog Company that provided support for those who needed it this morning at Maple Glen. As Dr. Levinowitz said, graduation was delayed one day, but we had a beautiful ceremony on Tuesday, June 11th. Our seniors entered Cardinal Stadium as seniors. They became graduates, and then as they left, they were alum. And we have an alum in the back of the audience tonight. A big thank you to our graduates and the Upper Dublin High School administration and staff for making the event memorable. Tonight in the audience, you see two relatively new faces. This is the first official legislative meeting for Ashley Kitten, who will succeed Tom Sigafus as Director of Human Resources. And in the audience tonight is Mr. Dave Hoffman, who replaces Ava Morrison with a new title, Chief Academic Officer. As Dr. Levinowitz said, this is the last legislative meeting for Brenda Jones-Bray and Tom Sigafus, but in preparation for your retirement, we now stream meetings live, so we know where you'll be the last Monday of every month, glued to your laptop or iPad at home. Staffing for 2019-2020, as we look at enrollment for next year, I'm pleased to report that we are within class size guidelines. Of course, as we go through the summer and we receive additional registrations, we will keep everyone updated. As an FYI, as we bring in our new kindergarten class for next year, right now we are planning on 3 sections of kindergarten at Jaredtown Elementary, probably 4 sections of kindergarten at Thomas Fitzwater, 4 sections at Maple Glen, and 5 sections of kindergarten at Fort Washington. We will have, if we don't have 300, we will be very close, but if the trend continues, we'll have over 300 incoming kindergartners for the fall. I'd like to say a special thanks to our grounds, maintenance, and custodial crews. If you've been watching my blog and the Building the Future page, you know we had some flooding last week at Sandy Run Middle School. Our internal staff did a great job initiating the cleanup, and we had ServPro with us to finish and continue that cleanup work. But I'd like to thank our internal crews for all the work that they did. Over the summer, we plan to release a stakeholder survey to garner the community's perceptions of our district. That survey will go out sometime in July and will remain active until the start of the school year. And then we will share those results most likely at the September or October legislative meetings. Please remember to stay tuned to our district calendar for upcoming events. And with that, I will say a final congratulations to Brenda and to Tom. Thank you for everything you've done. Your leadership has been appreciated and you will be missed in Upper Dublin.
Thank you, Dr. Yanni, and on behalf of the board, we'd like to also welcome Ms. Kitten to the table. I'm always in one. Welcome. Okay, we are now up to community input. The opportunity for community input, action items only, and presentations included on tonight's agenda. And as board policy, we limit community input to 4 minutes. Is there any community input? Okay, seeing none, we'll close community input. Announcements, communications, Ms. Bray, for the last time.
There are none this evening.
In your sleep. Okay, do we have minutes?
Yes, we do. If we could have approval of the minutes for May 20th, as well as a number of committee meetings that occurred in May.
Second.
Okay, any comments or questions? Seeing none, this is the May 20th legislative and various committee meetings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to the Education Committee, Dr. Ludwig.
There are a number of motions for tonight. A is for information, the typical enrollment information. So, but I will take E through S all together. They've all been discussed in committee. I will note that there is one new student activity and a couple new conferences. I move we accept
Second.
all of these.
Okay, we first, second by Dr. Kim. Comments or questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Roski?
Yeah, about the exchange students. We were talking about the funding at the education meeting, if it was for, what was it, 3,000 per student, or you remember that? Remember what we're talking about?
Yes, I believe it's a total of 3,000.
So it's 3,000 for all the students
Yes.
together? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Roski. Any other questions? Items B through S? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Moving on to the Education Committee Technology recommendations. Dr. Ludwig?
A and B, I will take together. Both of them were discussed in the Education Committee meeting.
Okay. I'm sorry, is there a comment?
For what?
We
I
did all,
did B through
we
F.
did B through S on education. B through S.
B through F.
Okay, we had first, was there a second?
Second.
Dr. Kim, comments or questions on the two items under technology recommendations, A and B? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Moving on to the Education Committee Pupil Services recommendations, Dr. Kim?
Yes, I move that we approve items A through F. I'm going to ask Ms. Clegg to actually come up and speak just to items C and E with respect to the sub-grant and additional budget, because we don't address these in the Education Committee.
For the educational agreement, the increase of $30,000 is attributed to a student who was placed there in the middle of the school year. So it's an increased tuition for 5 students that we have at LifeWorks. As far as the IDEA, question is how much money came?
Or just any background information, just so that the board is aware.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
We do child accounting every year where we report how many students have IEPs. And there is a specific amount of money that's allocated per student. And this year we had an increase of students with IEPs. So our IDEA Part B allocation went from $569,604.52 to $619,376.30. So it was an increase of $50,199.39.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to draw that attention to it. So again, the motion is to approve items A through F.
Okay, and there's a second by Dr. Ludwig. Comments or questions? What I find interesting, Ms. Clegg, I'm sure you agree with IDEA when it was passed many years ago. The agreement with the federal government, the federal grant, is that they would be funding, I believe it was 40% of the costs of districts. IDEA, I think they're now at 17%. And I know there was an additional push in Washington recently that Ms. Dean, Congresswoman Dean was advocating for, but It's very difficult, I think, with the way things are now at the federal level, and it's unfortunate that our costs continue to escalate, and most of it is then thrown on property tax. The state also does a very poor job in supporting it too. This year, I believe they're proposing, I believe it's $50 million for an increase in special ed. I heard today that the 200 million may not be passed, that it might be down to 160 for basic education. So that would be very disappointing. Although the bills have not passed yet at the state, however, at the end of the week, hopefully there will be an improved budget. We're hoping that all of the lobbying that we've done for education, for basic education, special ed, and career and technical education will get through the legislature and signed by the governor. But we have a first and a second for the pupil services recommendations, item A through F. Seeing no additional comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to 11.
Dr. Lubinowitz,
Yes, sir.
if I could just say, I think when we talk about funding, whether we're talking about regular ed funding or we're talking about special ed funding, there have been many promises made by the state. One of the things that I think we have to be careful about is none of this is burden none of this is a burden when it's about kids. So I just want to be clear for anyone who might be listening at home that we're not referring to our kids as a burden.
Most definitely not. Moving on to the operations now, Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. We have 14 items under operations. All of them were discussed at the operations committee last Thursday. However, before I make the motion, I'd like to invite Mr. Roos to comment on item L, the agreement with Upper Dublin Township.
Thank you. Item L are the 3 agreements with the Upper Dublin Township regarding Sandy Run Middle School. One of them is a development agreement which establishes certain amounts of escrow. In particular, in section Roman numeral 2(1)(f), it establishes an escrow of $1 million to be for building permit fees, demolition permit fees, costs of inspections, third-party consultant review, inspection fees, and other professional fees. I'm suggesting that the resolution that is letter L be modified to say that you don't authorize more than $500,000 for that escrow, and then we will convey that information to the township. Otherwise, the resolution is appropriate as worded.
So rather than the 1 million, we're putting in 500,000 in that item. And the replenishment formula still is identical.
Correct.
Okay.
And I want to clarify the motion as written does say that the permit fee and escrow amounts continue to be under discussion with the township. So by making this motion with that recommended change, it's still not final.
It's still not final, correct.
Okay, so with that understanding, I will move that we approve items A through N with the recommendation that amount be changed to $500,000 in the escrow agreement.
Right, that would be
Development agreement.
Sorry, the development agreement. The first
item L.
And it'll also be changed in the escrow agreement as well.
Yeah.
Okay, motion's made, is there a second?
Wait, I have a question.
First and second. Okay, Sarah, second, and Ms. Rothman? Okay. Questions or comments? Mr. Rossi?
Yes, sir. Is there going to be a time period where this agreement will be finalized?
Definitely within, as soon as possible. The goal is to get it done within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, under operations, there are items A through N with the modifications as indicated by Mr. Roos for item L. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to finance, Ms. Good.
Yes, thank you very much. Even though all these items were discussed in committee, I am going to separate some out.
So I'd like to make a motion that we first pass items A, B, and then E through Y.
Okay, Dr. Ludwig, second. These are items A, B, and then E through Y. That's the end of them? Yes, okay. Motion is made, is a second. Any comments or questions? A, B, E through Y. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. The remaining items?
Yes, so I'm going to take them separately. Item C is a motion that I'd like to make to approve the final 2019-2020 final budget with budgeted expenditures of $104,694,296. The 2019-2020 final budget represents a tax increase of 2.19% below the Act 1 index of 2.3%. This action is required to fund the educational program of the school district of Upper Dublin and to comply with the requirements of the Commonwealth law to enact an annual budget. This motion also includes funding resolutions, adopting a real estate tax resolution, providing a real estate tax of 34.4202 mils on assessed value of real estate or a rate of 33.44202 on $100 of assessed valuation of taxable property, adopting a real estate transfer tax resolution, reenacting a 1% real estate transfer tax in accordance with Act 511 of 1965, and adopting an earned income tax resolution by reenacting a 1% earned income tax in accordance with Act 511 of 1965.
Okay, second by Dr. Ludwig. Okay, this is approval of the final 2019-2020 budget. Any comments or questions? We will do a roll call on this. Okay, we'll have a roll call on this, please.
For approval of item C, final 2019-2020 budget. A yes, if you approve. And a no. Thank you. Mrs. Franczyk.
Yes.
Mrs. Good.
Yes.
Dr. Kim.
No.
Dr. Ludwig.
Yes.
Mr. Rofsky.
Yes.
Mrs. Rothman.
Yes.
Mrs. Sherpier.
Yes.
Mr. Sirota.
I'm going to vote no, and I will comment that I've said through the last month or two that my preferred number was 2.07%, and I do think we can do it at that, and the primary reason for that is I would like to tie the number to something, and that number is 90% of the Act 1 index. Going forward, my current intention is to continue to at least start with that point for the next year or two. Thank you.
Dr. Levitowitz.
Yes.
We have 7 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay. So the budget is passed. Moving on to item D.
Item D is the Homestead Farmstead Exclusion Act resolution, which is included. I'd just like to make a motion that we approve this resolution, which is in the documents.
Okay. Second, Dr. Ludwig. Okay, any comments or questions on item D, the Homestead Farmstead Exclusion Act resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, that concludes the finance report for tonight. Moving on to personnel report recommendations. Ms. Franczyk, I believe.
So I'd like to take items A through G, which includes our monthly personnel report. altogether. Make a motion to approve those.
Okay. This is a good second motion. Any comments or questions? Personnel report for June, A through G. Seeing no comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Policy.
We have a number of motions tonight for second reading. Policies 123, 130, and 338. You'll note that 130 has been a first reading several times before, so we have the AR ready tonight. We also have policies for first reading, 360, 339, 308, 355, and 709. Administrative regulations.
703.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Administrative regulations 123, 130, 246, 338-1, -2, and -3. We also have second reading repeals as listed in the report, as well as the first reading repeals. Make a motion for all of the entire report.
Thank you, Ms. Rothman. We heard you well. I had the mic right next to you. Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Sirota. Okay, this recommendation to approve the entire policy committee recommendations for June, items A through E. Are there any comments or questions? Okay.
So I want to commend Dr. Yanni's work for Administrative Regulation 130. I know that he worked with various stakeholders, with our administrative team in order to come up with an appropriate regulation. Also, I would like to take note of AR 246, which is student wellness. This is, we are changing this administrative regulations to have menstrual products available to all of our students at no cost. It will be in the nurse's office in all of our schools and in all bathrooms and locker rooms in the middle and high schools. This motion, or this administrative regulation came to light after some lobbying efforts of some of our high school students.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rothman. We have a comment from Mr. Sirota.
I'm just noticing in AR 130, I'm wondering if the online version is not the latest version. Okay. Thank you.
So it's been corrected?
It is correct.
Okay, good catch, Mr. Sirota. Okay, any other comments or questions? We have a first, we have a second for policy committee recommendations, items A through E. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to other business, we do have a number of items under other business, and we have two additional items that are not voting items that we will discuss tonight also. Dr. Ludwig, will you handle the other business?
I'll take all these separately. The first motion, I make a motion to affirm the list of 2019 Upper Dublin High School graduating class students.
Second.
Okay, we have first, second. Who made the second?
I did. Barely.
Thought Mr. Rossi should make the second.
Oh,
No, I mean, Dr. Kim.
Sorry.
Dr. Kim should make the motion.
Credit Dr. Kim. Apologies.
Dr. Kim should make, you made the motion?
Sure, I would love to make that motion.
Thank you. And the second?
Yes.
And who will second that? Dr. Love, okay. Ms. Francis, second, okay. And if we don't do this, they'll just be back in the fall.
Okay.
Did you pay the college bills yet?
Yeah, I paid the deposit, so.
Okay. Item A, list of graduates. This is a motion to affirm the list. No comments or questions. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone opposed? The Adolescent Sleepiness Task Force.
All right, I make a motion to approve the creation of a task force to begin no later than September 15, 2019, to study the issue of adolescent sleepiness.
Second.
And a second by Mr. who's over there? Sherbia? Sure. Okay, first, second. Okay, comments or questions regarding this topic? Anything? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of this item B under the business, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, strategic action plans.
The next one, I make a motion to approve the district's strategic action plans. These we have discussed a number of times, both in the education committee and at the meetings that included community members and other stakeholders. So I think now we're ready to approve them.
Okay, motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Sirota. Any comments or questions?
I just have a comment.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, we've got two down here.
We all have comments.
I'd like to thank the administration, spearheaded by Dr. Yanni, but many of the administrators also here in attendance tonight participated in this process, many of the community members as well, sitting in the audience. This was a very robust process. I felt it really represented and reflected a lot of the needs and interests of the community, and really was a very student-centered and student-driven process. So I just wanted to say thank you to all who participated.
Okay. Any other comments, Mrs. Sherpy?
Just wanted to highlight that this is a dynamic document, so it's not something that we just did to mark a box and say, check a box to say we're done. This is hopefully a plan that we'll live by, and if we need to make updates and adjustments.
Okay, anyone else? Just to echo Ms. Francis' comments, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everyone. I know many of the board members participated. Some of the community members in the audience tonight also shared a lot of information and participated, and especially a thank you to Dr. Yanni, who, if it wasn't for his leadership and guidance, I don't think we would have moved forward with the strategic planning process at all. We would have just accepted what we had before. And this is such a most important document. This will lead us through the next few years, and we'll continue to refer to the strategic action plan when we move forward with many of the curriculum and finance ideas that we have. So we have a first and we have a second. This is the strategic action plans. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, appointment of the board secretary.
My next motion is I would like to recommend we appoint Andrew Leckman as the board secretary for a 4-year term, July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2023.
Okay, for a second, Ms. Leckman will be joining us on July 1. Ms. Perry will be leaving us on July 1, and a smooth transition of our board secretaries. Comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Okay, item E.
Item E, I move we approve the Upper Dublin Board of School Directors submission to the PSBA 2020 legislative platform. And I guess I'll wait for a second.
Second.
Second item is good. Okay.
So this recommendation for the platform is regarding the mental and emotional health of students. This is an issue that we think is particularly important, and we would like to propose that this is, when it's added to the PSBA legislative agenda, it will then be voted on by school boards across the country, and if it passes and is added to the legislative agenda, it will influence how PSBA advocates for legislation.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Rushton.
It says on the document, board secretary Brenda Bragg. Do we need to change that?
No, because Brenda will be signing it. It needs to be at PSBA by the end of the week on the 28th. So Ms. Brenda will be signing it and probably PDFing or getting it over to the individual at PSBA. And it's a good question. Thanks, Dan. And the way this will work is in July there will be a platform committee meeting that I'll be involved in. And we're hoping to get, there should be quite a bit of input from various districts, especially in this area, about similar proposals from what we have. They may be slightly different. And what the platform committee does, it then tries to make, clean up, improve the language, and put something into a format that would be approved at the PASPA Leadership Conference on the last day on Friday. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of item E, other business, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to we have two other items. In other business, I'm going to ask Dr. Kim to take this next item, logically.
Sure, this is really a personal motion more or less. It's been my joy to be able to serve on the board for the past 4 years and really seeking to, again, try to do what Dr. Yanni espouses, to have all of our students be our students. Due to a series of unforeseen events, I've been offered a position out of state, and so I'll be moving this summer. My intent is to submit I motion that my resignation be at the end of July, Tuesday, July 30th, 2019.
What you mean to do is you are officially informing us that you are resigning, I'm sorry, what date, August 1st?
No, Tuesday, July 30th.
Tuesday, July 30th, and which is actually prior to your actual relocation. So that means you would have to get a motion in a second to accept the resignation, but it shouldn't be made by Mr. Kim. I apologize.
Okay, we need somebody to make that motion.
Reluctantly, I will make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay, before we vote on this, obviously, we need community input anytime there's an emotion brought on the table, on the floor at a legislative meeting. So is there anybody that would like to provide community input on this topic alone? Okay. Ms. Briscoe. It's about his resignation.
I get it. I just want to wish you good luck. I'm rarely surprised at these meetings. Obviously I didn't know that was coming, and you've been a true gentleman. I don't always agree with you on everything, but I do agree with your demeanor and how you've conducted yourself at the meetings. So I wish you good luck in your next place.
Okay. And you will be at our July meeting. Okay. We have a motion on the table. Second. All those who reluctantly say approve, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? 8-0. Okay. The other item is just an informational item. This is about a tax rebate program that has been shared with me by a couple of my colleagues on the board. This program is entirely a property tax rent rebate program. As many of you probably know, that there is a property tax rent rebate program in Pennsylvania that's funded from the PA lottery proceeds. What a district in the neighboring area did was they piggybacked on that, and they offered their own tax rebate program. The first year was only for homeowners. The second year, it was also, they're going to be including renters also. What this program does is it looks at, there's 3 different categories of homeowners or renters that are eligible for this program. First is 65 and older. The second category is widows and widowers age 50 and older. And the third category is disabled individuals ages 18 and older. What this program, how this program is implemented in another district is there's an application that those people submit to the district, and the district determines a percentage of the maximum rebate that's available for these individuals. So for example, if somebody has an income of $0 to $8,000 in Upper Dublin, that maximum rebate is $650. What the district then did is they took a percentage of that. The first year they did 25%, and they gave them a rebate based on the application. And it goes all the way up to $35,000, up to that amount. Those people are eligible for a property tax rebate. Just for some reference, in 2017, there were 261 individuals in Upper Dublin that received rebates from the state, so we're only talking about 261 homes. We're actually talking about 210 homes and 51 renters that, based on last year's data, would apply. But I really believe that this would benefit those in the greatest financial need in our community, and the cost would not be significant for the district, but I think it would really be a way to help out those in the greatest financial need. So I just wanted to put it out there for some discussion and see where it's going to go over the next year. Okay, any comments on this? Dr. Ludwig?
I think this is a really good program. I mean, I know that we just voted for a tax increase, and I mean, we all, I think, feel torn about how large our tax increase should be and what kind of burden it places, especially on people at the lower income, the lower end of the income scale. So if we can do something, even if it is a small step in addition to the state program, I would be for it.
Any other comments? Dr. Kim?
I know this may not pertain to me, but I was also in favor of this when I forwarded as well over to your attention. I do think that as we take a look at our district residents, in particular those who are on fixed or low incomes, it's something that we as a school board and as a township really need to do our due diligence in terms of not only listening, but to be able to do whatever we can for those citizens in particular.
Ms. Cherry?
Yes, I'm also very interested in this program. I think the emphasis should be placed on residents who have at least a minimum number of years in the district to be qualified.
Okay. Tracy?
I'm also very supportive of investigating how we would bring this to Upper Dublin. We have it in the, as you said, a district I know well, and I've seen that it has been successful.
Mr. Serrata?
I'm curious about the process for this idea going forward. I think we all, I certainly agree that it's an idea worth pursuing. I think we all do. What form will that pursuit take? Is this a recommendation from the administration? Is this the formation of a subcommittee of the board or some other group? How is this going to manifest?
Okay, good question. Dr. Allen, do you have any comments at this point?
So, Mr. Leckman and I will be exploring this upon his arrival in Upper Dublin. We'll also be speaking to the superintendent and CFO and other business office staff in North Penn to find out what their process was going forward. And I'm sure there will be consultation with our legal counsel as well.
Okay, thank you. So, it's an informational item, and just to stay tuned. It's something that we're interested in at least pursuing. Any other comments? Okay. Moving on to the liaison committee reports. Montgomery County IU, Dr. Ludwig.
The IU meeting will be this Wednesday, and then there's no meeting in July, so the next meeting after that will be in August.
Okay. Ms. Rothman, anything on the legislative committee?
We've been keeping an eye on what's going on with the state budget, of course, since they have yet to pass one. Also, we've been reviewing legislation that's been coming up through that will impact public education, specifically Senate Bill 700, which impacts PlanCon. We know that there hasn't been any movement on cyber charter funded reform. However, there has been some movement on charter school bills. So that is something to keep an eye on. And HB 800, that House bill was passed by both the House and the Senate, which had increased EITC by $100 million next year. However, that was vetoed by the governor which is something that the legislative team of MCIU applauds. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rothman. Eastern Center for Arts and Technology held its final meeting last week, and we will not be meeting in July. Programs as presented will continue. We currently have 14 programs at Eastern, and I know our numbers are slightly up this year, so we're excited about that. And we look forward to our new executive director, Ms. Plesnarski, who has started, but at our last legislative meeting, we said a final farewell for Mr. Allen and wished him the very best. And we hope to have Dr. Plesnarski here sometime in next school year, I believe, right, Dr. Yanni? Yeah, to do a welcome and a presentation. Excellence and equity, Dr. Kim?
Yes, in addition to the many things that I was involved with, I really appreciated this work. I'm unfortunately sad that not only Ms. Morrison, but now myself will be moving away from this. But I'm also excited the fact that Dr. Yanni, Ms. Kitten, from what I heard, and Ms. Penner are all on board in regards to district personnel. If I could just implore the board to continue to do that work around equity and excellence, I think it's really great for all of our students. The different committees are beginning to plan for the 2019-2020 school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. And just a sidebar on that, the PASA PSBA Leadership Conference in October, the first day will be a symposium on equity and excellence. And I'm not sure they got the word out, but you know, we're very excited about that. And perhaps when we see the applications, perhaps we can present without you. We would miss you at that presentation, Dr. Kim. Moving on to Sherpier, EAC, Education Advisory Committee.
Yeah, the EAC met on June 5th with a number of members of the board. They presented their 4 topics. 2 reports were given to the board, one on math acceleration and one on best practices for teacher evaluation. And the 2 other reports are being completed, one on community involvement and one on executive function. The EAC's leadership is changing some. Faith Stacks and Michelle O'Toole are both stepping down, and Rob Rosenthal and Beth Nixon are filling their spots. There are also some EAC members who are retiring or moving to other activities. So if there's anybody in the audience or watching from afar and has an interest in joining the EAC, please contact Robert Rosenthal or Dr. Yanni or myself. There will be no meeting until September.
Okay, thank you, Sherpier. Regarding PSBA, again, I'd like to thank the board for the support of the platform recommendation tonight. Registration is open for the PASA PSBA conference, and PSBA has been very busy reaching out to board members in terms of advocating for the budget. This is the last week, and we hope that encouraging our legislators, I call it the 3 state reps that we have, encouraging them to support the governor's proposals for education. PTA, PTO, Ms. Francis.
There's no report at this time.
Okay, Mr. Rofsky, Township.
We did not meet, but we will be meeting July 17th.
Right. Public Government Education Foundation is good.
Just briefly, technically the foundation is off for the summer, but I do know that there will be some budgetary and strategic planning work going on behind the scenes. They meet again in September.
Solicitors report, Mr. Roos.
Thank you. I brought to the board's attention in our solicitor's update a class action lawsuit against Joel J.U.U.L. For alleged unlawful marketing of vaping to minors. They're looking for school districts to represent in this case because of they believe there's some costs associated with it. Again, I just passed the information along to districts if they are interested. Do you want the sunshine announcements now or there? Okay. There was an executive session prior to this meeting tonight regarding personnel matters, regarding labor relation matters, regarding threat discrimination, and also under the district received its Act 44 safety report, which is now a proper executive session item under the amended Sunshine Act.
Okay, and at this point, we are up to our second community input. Please step up to the podium, state your name, where you reside, 4 minutes.
Jenny Vitella, Ambler, and Dr. Kim, I'm going to miss you terribly, and I know our daughters will miss each other too, so that's really sad for us. The flood into Sandy Run, thankfully none of the school store supplies were ruined. I've been reported to today, so that's good, because that's in new inventory we would be ill-equipped to afford to replace. But my question is, we cleaned it up and we hired Servpro, and I'm wondering who is paying for that, and also who was responsible for that, so that for our next time it rains, will this be a problem again during the construction? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I do this now? Now that I'm not a student. Oh, it was? I didn't? Really? Okay. I'm going to echo what Ms. Bister said about Robert Kim. I'm really going to miss you.
We need your name and where you reside.
Sorry. Josh from Oakland.
Last name?
Portney.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art. I can call you that, right? First couple questions. I'm going to jump around here really quick, though. First, does the superintendent set the limit to new clubs per year accepted by the activities director in the high school? And can and does the board intervene in the process of the approval of those clubs? Also, when will AR 130, the homework amendment, will that go into effect, and how will they be accounted for? And the fourth thing, I forget, but that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Josh, I can call you Josh?
Mr. Porter.
Sir. Ms. Brister?
Anita Brister. You may call me Anita. So interestingly, coincidentally, what Josh and I were talking about tonight was some information about the state contribution to education and the budget and those kind of things. So I did a little research before I met with him. But anyway, I want to comment and ask some questions about your comment, Art, that you feel that there's not enough basic education funding and special education funding. And you talked about hopefully Governor Wolf's budget will pass and whatever. And that you've done a lot of, I guess you mean you and the board, have done a lot of lobbying along these issues. So the thing is, one of the things I looked up is the increase, although the state doesn't, we know that we don't get as much from the state as we get from local revenue. It's been that way for a very long time. The state increase for Upper Dublin was, from last year to this year, 3.8%. And it's actually one of the higher ones. And if there's time, I'll ask Brenda something at the end here. But in other words, out of all the districts in the entire state, we got 3.8% increase over last year. And we're the 17th highest, and then all the others are lower than us as far as what amount of funding they got. So I guess that brings me to my next question, which is I reminded myself how much we pay in state income taxes, which is 3.07%. So when you're doing this lobbying, what is it that you would want to have happen? Would you want an increase in our state income tax? Or are you would you be asking your legislators to shift money from somewhere else? Or are you asking for a state income tax increase? Because I think there'd be a lot of people not too keen on that. And since I have a second or a minute left, Brenda, I am a little confused. All these meetings, and I'm still confused. So if you can do it without having to take an hour, although it's fine with me if you want to, why do we have, like ours is, we got 3.8% increase over last year. And then like Upper Merion only got 3%, and I could read all the others, but I won't. So can you just give a brief report or how is this decided? Is it anything to do with enrollment, or is it based on last year's amount that you got, or? Some districts got almost nothing. Philadelphia got a lot, but they need a lot. So could you explain how the state funding is allocated if possible? Thank you.
Anyone else? Here we'll close community input. Dr. Yanni?
To the questions about clubs and if the superintendent regulates the number of clubs. The process for approving new clubs is part of the teachers' collective bargaining agreement. So clubs are decided upon through an approval process at the building level and through HR, and the involvement that the board has is to affirm the superintendent's recommendation in the personnel section of the people who are going to run those clubs. So do I have direct involvement in overseeing how many clubs there are? No, there's a process that it goes through the HR office.
Dr. Yanni, do you want to answer the Sandy Run Middle School?
Sure, so Sandy Run, well, I'm actually going to defer to Ms. Bray for the who's paying for it part.
We certainly have already put multiple insurance carriers on notice regarding the damage that was received and to help with the cleanup costs. So Mr. Lester has been talking with the brokers, not the brokers, excuse me, the contacts at the insurance companies. So we do expect to be putting in a claim for that. So that's where it should primarily come. We will report on it at a later date in operations, or Mr. Lester or Mr. Leckman will.
Comment was made maybe about if it rains again, would this happen again? Well, it will rain again.
Yes, the primary reason for the funding it received is, if you're familiar with the front of Sandy Run, the main building, the hillside that drops down along the main entrance. That hillside, there are drains at the bottom of the hill that were just not keeping up with the water that was coming down the hill from this rainstorm. And the water level rose in the courtyard and made its way through air vents into the building. We did check the drains. The drains are open, they're clean, they're running. We do have additional drains that will be coming online very shortly with the construction. We added different additional drains out in the parking lot. And once those drains are in service, which should be very shortly, I think we have one more come online as of Friday. And as the lot gets paved, as if they're setting the modulars now, so the paving should be shortly, and we'll be diverting more water to those drains. This is just an unforeseen heavy rainstorm that drains were just not keeping up with the water that was running down. Like I said, when the rain stopped, we did monitor, and the drains are taking as much rain as they can handle. So we're not expecting it. If we had another rainstorm like this next week, we did put sandbags in place to prevent any water that would be coming down from the hill from getting into the building, so there are measures. But once the new drains are up and running, I don't see this happening again in this location.
Thank you, Ms. Lester. There was a question about AR 130, Dr. Yanni.
Before I answer that, and I'm sorry I didn't answer that. And I'm not trying to do any doublespeak here. I do want to remind everybody that even though insurance may pick this up, I want to remind the board that we'll pay for it eventually in increased rates and whatnot. So, as we move forward, when we talk about whose fault things are, I really think it would behoove everyone if we have a clear idea of who is responsible for what when it happens, whether it's the district, whether it's a construction management company, whether it's a contractor. Otherwise, we're going to wind up in a period or in several periods of litigation, which will negatively impact the district. Regarding AR 130, that AR will probably morph over time around homework. One of the things back in, I want to say March, we had a policy meeting where we invited students to come and talk to us about the whole idea of homework, and then we did some focus groups out in buildings. And one of the things that we talked about was the importance of homework being really valuable and meaningful and not being busy work, right? So a worksheet where you can Google every answer, get rid of it. It doesn't need to be there. And then we also talked about putting some parameters around homework so that what we were hearing was that some students, especially at the high school level, were spending 2, 3, 4 hours worth of time a night on homework. Now, if you choose to take a complete AP schedule, that's sort of the reality of life. But for students that weren't taking those really aggressive schedules, we wanted to put some common sense regulations around how long kids really should be spending on homework. And I also have a very deep, firm philosophy that if we assign homework, we better check it and not just check it for completion, because if we ask students to do homework at home and they do something incorrectly over and over and over again, the instruction that we give on Tuesday is lost, and then we have to go back on Wednesday and reteach everything.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Perez, it looks like you've been busy doing some research regarding Ms. Brister's question.
I have, and I really can't give a definitive answer to how the 3.8% was calculated. Even today, we've received new funding amounts from the state regarding what our budget might be, and today's amount was up by $498,000, which would mean that we would receive over $3 million in funding, which is significally over what we have in the past.
Is that just the basic ed funding? Or is that basic and special ed?
It's the House Bill 790 appropriations, and no, it's what they're calling basic ed. But when you start digging into it, they've reallocated some money from the reimbursement for PSERS and for Social Security. So I'm not trying to confuse things or make them more difficult. I'm just saying that the amounts are constantly changing. And as we look at other, one of the earlier iterations of what the state was proposing was to do away with a grant amount and include it with, and call it basic ed funding. So I would want to see the numbers that you are using, and I'll be more than happy to, and try to give you a more definitive answer. But the budget continues to change, and it is only 6 days before the end of the year.
So if it looks like I'm sitting over here and I'm texting and I'm furiously typing away on my computer, it's because I'm getting real-time updates from PASA, which is the Pennsylvania Association of School Administrators. No one from PASA said this, but another superintendent wrote that it feels like a shell game right now. In the last, since 6:53 this evening, we have received 4 emails about state funding. Everything from what the basic education funding increases were going to be, what will happen with Ready to Learn, transportation subsidy, and so it is. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just trying to give clarity around this. It's exceedingly difficult in the week leading up to the budget adoption. Particularly this year and the last couple of years, to know what money you're actually getting. So I'm going to have a prediction. I don't think we're going to have a budget by June 30th. I mean, we will have a budget by June 30th, but the state will not have a budget by June 30th. In regards to a question about lobbying, as part of the lobbying efforts to increase the state income tax, as educators, specifically through PASA, we're not seeking that. We're actually seeking some shifting around of money, making sure that districts don't have downward amendments throughout the year. So for example, with our federal funding, Title I, Title II, Title IV, we don't even know, we just found out, Ms. Bray, in about May, what we were really allocated for this year that we're in, correct?
Yes.
And so It'll probably be next May by the time we figure out, or that we're told definitively what that amount will be. The other big ticket item out there is IDEA funding. There's been lobbying to fund that at flat levels moving forward instead of decimating that budget line item. There are certain things in the education budget that are put towards things that don't move the needle that could be rerouted back to basic ed funding. So for example, there was a proposal by the governor to increase starting salaries for teachers in school districts that were below, I believe it was $40,000. So there was a significant amount of money put in that line item. Even when that was attributed to those school districts, there was no way that that money was going to get those teachers anywhere near $40,000. So instead of slicing the educational funding pie more and more and more, I think at least PASS's advocacy is to allow some greater control at the district level of how to manage, the funding that you should be getting, and not bifurcating it off and spreading it around among new things. Every year, things change. Some things, one year might be an entitlement, the next year it's a grant, the next year it's wrapped into basic ed funding. And so it's increasingly difficult in fundraising, frustrating for, it does feel like fundraising. But it is frustrating to ever have a clear and succinct answer. And as a type A person, I hate that, because I don't feel like I can ever give a straight answer to anyone who asks, what does Upper Dublin get? And I wasn't able to do it in New Hope Silbury or East Pennsboro or anywhere, and hopefully, I'll just fix it when I become the Secretary of Ed.
Not for 10 years. We hope.
I have 4 left on this contract.
But we just renewed it. The other piece of information that Dr. Ludwig.
I would just add one other thing that some of us have lobbied for in terms of funding is that we lobbied against adding money to the EITC program, which basically takes money out of the state budget and allows it to be funneled in various ways to private and religious schools.
The other issue we have is 3 or 4 years ago, I guess the fair funding formula was passed, and at that time it only applies to new funding. So right now, I think after this year, it might apply to 9 or 10% or 11% of all funding from the state to districts. Because there's that hold harmless clause in the old funding formula, there are many districts who are getting much more than they should be getting. If they would implement the fair funding formula at 100%, I'm not advocating that right now, but if they would, we would get a significant increase in state funding from the fair funding formula. So that would be helpful. There's been some movement to accelerate that process, not to change it overnight, but if it would be accelerated, it would benefit us. And the other statistic that you hear, if you look at across the country, if you look at the cost of public education, total cost in each state, and the contribution that the state makes for that cost of education, Pennsylvania ranks 46th in terms of what its share of paying for education. Obviously, the rest of it is going to the districts. That's a statistic that you hear a lot about. Any other comments or questions regarding the community input? At this point, we have any final comments from the board members or superintendent?
All right, if I could have one comment.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to go on record in regards to my negative vote on the tax increase. I actually wanted to side with Mr. Sirota in regards to 2.07 and stand there. I wasn't at the finance meeting to be able to vocalize that with respect to the straw poll that we were going through. I think large reason that was going lower, I'm talking with others, including Dr. Yanni, thought that there were a lot of questionables specifically related to not only budget, assessment appeals, and even Sandy Run, that made me go higher. I think that we could achieve everything that we're trying to do in terms of student programming at the 2.07, and that's where I stood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Dr. Yanni?
So I would like to thank Dr. Kim for your service to the board. It's just about, well, it's a little over a year now since I interviewed with the board. And fun fact about Dr. Kim and about Ms. Franczyk, they flanked me at the interviews. So they both sat here and they were the two hardest people to read in the interview. But thank you for your support of the initiatives we brought forward this year. Your board service is truly respected and will be missed.
Okay, upcoming meetings, operations, July 25th, finance, July 25th, legislative meeting, not until July 29th. So we have a long break between now and then. A motion to adjourn, Ms. Bray. Mr. Sigafoos.
In a rare opportunity, I would like to have the last word or close to it tonight. So I just want to thank everybody in the room and anyone who might be watching tonight for the wonderful way to end my career in public education. I very much enjoyed being in Upper Dublin for the last 10.5 years. That's passing 10 budgets and a lot of other things. And unlike a number of my colleagues who are retiring this year, I'm not going to bore you with the number of school board meetings, the minutes that have been involved, the number of school board members, and all the numbers that CFOs and business managers like to talk about. Really, even in the business office, we're here for the students and the residents of the community. Upper Dublin's been a great place to work and to be part of, and it hasn't been just a job. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
I just wanted to mirror Ms. Bray's comments. I thank you for expressing that faith and hiring me 12 years ago. It truly has been a pleasure, especially allowing me to move into the Human Resources Director position the last 10 years. I've grown a lot educationally, and going out on a high note is always a good thing. So I thank the board for showing that faith and bringing me on board to Upper Dublin, and also the community for all of your kind words and efforts, and hopefully you feel that I've served you well, because I've always looked at it as serving the community of Upper Dublin. So I wish Ms. Kinn very well. She's off to a great start and is well prepared for July 1 handoff and taking the reins. So thank you again.
Thank you. At this time, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ms. Franczyk, second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Everyone, please have a great summer. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Rothman.